Welcome to Next In, where I have the pleasure of speaking with Matt Candler, who is the CEO of Studio369 and MetalCore. Thanks for joining me today, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shane. Great to be here.
Where are you coming from today?
I'm in lovely, warm Palm Desert, California, where it's tipping the scales at about 108.
I dream of being in a place that's 108. I think the last time I was somewhere that was 108 was when I was at Yuma, Arizona for the first time when my brother was having his very first child.
Oh, well, that's a good reason to be there. It's a dry heat, like I was in Austin a few weeks ago.
People tell me it's a dry heat, and so I went down to Yuma, Arizona, and it was in August. I think this was August of 2021, potentially. And I decided not to wear sunscreen. And not only did I proceed to not wear sunscreen, I decided to proceed to play volleyball in a pool. And you can imagine what happens in the heat of the dry heat in the desert. It was nowhere good fast. I was like, I'm half Spanish. I'm gonna survive. This is gonna be totally fine. Nope.
Spanish.
TMI, it is the only place on earth, I will never go back to Yuma, Arizona in August, where I got suntan and I got sunburn and I experienced sun poisoning for the first time. Fun fact, if you didn't know, both your eyelids and your nipples can burn and peel, and that happened, and that was wild to me. So anyways, TMI, that was horrible. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about much more interesting things than that.
Speaking of bad decisions.
Yuma, Arizona, August, no suntan, burnt nipples and eyelids.
You even called on the power of your ancestors to protect you. And they said, nope, sorry, man.
The ancestors said, learn your lesson, lather up, do it. Anyways, well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, Matt, and we're really here to dive into your story. So everybody that joins in and comes in to listen, like, our goal is to go, Matt, you're somewhere, you own this organization, you're getting ready to launch and build a badass product, which we're going to get into here today to really understand MetalCore and what that means and why it got built. But before we really understand MetalCore, I really want to understand Matt Candler, right? So help me understand, how did you get into games in the first place? Like when did that happen?
Oh man, that happened when I was, young in school, and they brought computers into school, and we started playing video games during recess, which I don't know if we were supposed to, but they didn't know at the time. And I started wondering how they were built, and I started actually exploring how to program, and kind of figuring out what could make a computer run, and digging into it and taking them apart and reassembling them, and really learning all things about what was behind. This is DOS days, right? This is BASIC, so it was before any of the OSs were done, and just really always trying to figure out how to build a computer game.
You're like, I'm thinking about building video games. How old are we?
I was 11, 12, and we were playing D&D and saying, wouldn't it be cool if we could do D&D in a computer game? We try to program that ourselves, and in BASIC, and on really old computers. And
so long story short, you got to start at 10, 11, or 12, or your life is over.
No, I don't think so. I think you just, I think curiosity and things you're interested in, and kind of lead you into learning things and just kind of digging in.
Okay, we got to understand this a little bit better. So we're playing D&D, and then we're immediately going, how do we get this into the digital world? But like the real question is, what was the D&D character that you were playing?
I was playing a paladin. Yeah,
paladin.
That was pretty OP, I think, in our D&D that we were doing. I pretty much I could do anything. But then they were bringing out the D&D games on floppy disks, right? Which is way, way old. But I was actually playing D&D games going, this is fantastic. This is the best thing ever.
So, being curious was awesome, but like, today we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of self-implementation tools, and data is unlike no other. How, back when you were 10 or 11, how were you curious enough to explore how to build a game during that time where data wasn't even available? Right now, we could just go, hey, ChatGPT, like, help me understand how to build a script for this. Can't do that right now. Back then.
I just started asking questions to people that like we had really good. I had really good teachers in kind of middle school and high school that said, "Oh, you want to know? Here, let's figure this out together," because they were figuring it out too. Because they were all trying to say, what are these computers that we have in our classroom now, right? So everybody was trying to understand it. So it was kind of a mutual. Let's all dig in,
Okay,
and that was
so
kind of cool. So
10,
having that kind
11,
of leadership, yeah.
that's incredible. So teachers that actually helped you get connected to figure out how to start building. So where
Well,
do you
no, I was labor for them, right? I was doing all their work. They were smart. They were like, "Oh yeah, you can figure it out for me, and then tell me."
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay. So did you get paid for that? You're like, no.
No, I might have gotten a better grade, but no, I basically was doing that.
Paid
Um,
in education. Okay.
yeah,
So
I really got into video games out of college when
okay.
I was trying to get into film school, and I was in LA, and I was working on a bunch of films, and I got into SC to go to film school there, but I needed a summer gig, and I was playing a lot of video games, and my girlfriend at the time said, "Hey, there's this ad in the paper. It's at Activision. They need quality assurance testers." And they were advertising in the paper. And I said, "Oh," and she's like, "You should go do that." So I went and applied just like I was like, and the guy's like, "Do you know video games?" I'm like, "Yeah." And that was it. I never left act like that was it. I was like, I'm going to stay in video games. So that's really how I got in.
So we're like in college, we're looking for a summer gig.
Yeah.
Girlfriend at the time goes, "Hey, there's this QA role with this random company called Activision." I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever heard of them before at this
Nope.
time, but we're like, there's this small company, like they might not go anywhere.
Their stock was at $2 at the time.
Oh, $2. That's like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, we
good.
got in at $2, and we started working on MechWarrior 2. That's how I started in the game industry.
So MechWarrior 2 was like the very first game, and
Very,
you started at QA.
yeah, starting QA. Everybody at Activision really started in QA. You had to do at least a few months in QA if you were on a production track. Essentially, it was the idea like all the all the smart guys had to go prove themselves in QA and see if you survived that process, either QA or customer service. At
So
least to
how
a
long were
extent.
you in QA for?
Just about 4 months, and then I moved into a production role, basically helping everyone, and that was a lot of it was just burning discs, right? Burning CDs every night and making sure that the QA team and the production team had enough discs. Um, One of my good friends there, Mark Lamia, who went on to run all of Call of Duty at Black Ops, was also in the burn room when we were making discs all the time, and just that was one of the things we did in production.
That's
Which is like it's so ancient to think about. Like we had to put all the software, the whole game onto a disk and burn 50 copies every night and send that out to everybody in the studio so they could all play the game from a disk, because part of that was also DRM, right? You had to have a disk in the PC in order for the application to run.
yeah, it's like nowadays people can't even comprehend that. Like the closest they get is they're like, "Yeah, I watched Grandma Boy once too," where they put it in and they had to go home and
Right.
that's
It's ancient
hilarious.
stuff. So
So we were at Activision for some time and
yep,
then ended up going to Seven Studios and then
yep.
all of a sudden became the president of Grind Games. We're there for 5 years before going to Paramount. So I guess what made you take that leap of faith from going to Seven Studios to Grind Games and help me understand that a bit?
So Activision was doing a thing where it kind of spun out all the internal production to external teams. So Seven Studios was one of those teams that was doing a lot of development work for Activision. So we were making a lot of the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 games. We did Fantastic Four at Activision. We did Defender for Midway. There were several other games there. One of the one of the groups at Activision that spun out went and started Jamdat, which was a mobile games company. And one of the people that I really um, was a mentor and looked up to was Mitch Lasky, who spun out to run Jamdat. And Mitch has gone on to incredible success and great bets as a VC. And he's probably one of the smartest guys in the game industry that we all know. Um, and he was at Jamdat, and I was like, well, those guys are making mobile games. And so, and we were also playing a lot of Texas Hold'em poker at that time. And I decided that I just wanted to make my own game and make my own Texas Hold'em game on mobile. And so I talked to one of a very good programmer friend that I knew that had worked at Activision, who was super smart and super talented, and between the two of us, we built a mobile Texas Hold'em poker game. And we just formed Grind Games because we needed a corporation, right, to actually publish it. But we were just kind of tooling around, just making a game for ourselves because we were having fun playing Texas Hold'em, and
Mhm.
we wanted to do it on our phones.
So what did that look like? Because you went from large enterprise company, Activision, a lot of structure, a lot of tools, a lot of support, and then all of a sudden you're like, and we're gonna do things on our own. And I think there's a lot of people that are in that kind of AAA space where they aspire to do what you've done and you're doing again today.
Yeah.
But that was the studio that was like your first kind of leap of faith on yourself and starting an organization on your own, and that's like a terrifying feeling. Like I know I've been there a couple of times where it's like I went from Facebook and then I was like, all right, I'm leaving Facebook and I'm going to start this tech company, and it's like that was terrifying. And most people are like, I'm never going to do that, but you did it, and you've done it multiple times, and you're running a successful studio today and getting ready to ship another amazing product. But how did you take that leap of faith to build that game on your own and build something individually rather than staying at Activision at that time?
Well, I mean, the time at Activision was very not very corporate. It was very like we're building this, and we were doing so many things on the cutting edge and building software, and there wasn't a lot of infrastructure at Activision during the time I was there. Right? I left, did an incredible job building that and growing it, and Bobby took that to a huge success. But when we were there, we were really, you know, grinding and figuring everything out ourselves. So it wasn't that much of a different leap in terms of building software. And we built mobile games kind of on our own time, right? Where we were saying kind of we want to do this ourselves. So it wasn't a big stepping away from my normal process of we're trying to build a game and we figure out what the best way to build that game is. Right. There's a design doc, there's technical specs, there's art specs. You create this, recipe, this model of then you just kind of follow it. And that model, that formula can exist across any kind of software that you build, I think. So that's why I've been able to do it many times is that, you kind of set a budget, you set a schedule, the resources you're working with, and you try to stay as close as you can within the parameters of those resources. So it wasn't that much different than what we'd been trained to do kind of on ourselves, right?
So for you, it just felt like second nature. It's just different logo, different banner. It's all on me now.
Yeah, but it wasn't like all on me other than I just wanted to make the game that I wanted to play, and that was pretty fun. Right? That was what we were trying to do was like make the game that we wanted to play, the experience we wanted to do ourselves. And
Yeah.
that turned into something fortunately that many other people wanted. And so that's kind of been the thing that I've been able to lean back on is, am I having a good experience with this software? If I'm having a good experience with the software, generally it seems like other people will too. And I try to look at the software building process as I'm not trying to make it for the best player. I'm trying to make it for maybe, an average player, which I consider myself to kind of be now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been in multiple successful positions at some amazing companies. Executive producer at Skybound Entertainment, VP of Interactive Development at Paramount Pictures Digital
Yep.
Entertainment, and multiple others. And I have to imagine throughout that time, right? I know that, being in those leadership roles, there's definitely moments where there's challenges, and then there's moments of great pride from that. Do you remember any significant challenges or obstacles that you faced that truly helped you develop your leadership style and your leadership role as it is today?
Um, Not specifically. I mean, every time there's always that feeling like you're trying to pitch to upper management or to the board or to the shareholders that what you're doing is not crazy and to give you a chance. It's usually borne out when your team is like, behind you and aligned with that. And so the lesson I always try to take is that we're doing this as a group, right? We're doing this as a team. Um, I, at a certain point, there may need to be like a decision made, like an executive decision, but I try to let everyone, and this is the thing I've really tried to evolve into and grow into is less authority and more of a group and more of a team environment and let everyone contribute. I think that's changed. That's what's changed a lot. I think in my working career
Okay.
is work has become much more collaborative. We're not necessarily doing so much of it in the office anymore either, right? We're doing it with around the world people, and I try to find really good people at what they do and let them do it now, and let them try to figure things out as well.
And I think that speaks volumes from the way that you inherently like kind of just grew up in the gaming industry, where it's like you started in QA and then went into production. And it's like you've always been in this producer mindset where it's like, I'm really the centerpiece of making sure that there's this strong ecosystem that's thriving and growing and scaling. And so all of this sounds like it's like, well, a lot of this is just come second nature. What do you imagine has been like the biggest differentiator between how games are being developed today, how teams are interacting today versus what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago?
I think the way that um, documents are shared, right? It's, I mean, I know this is strange to say, but the way documents and material and information is shared across, and the way we communicate on Discord, um, and then how we use that to display the game and test the game and show people what's happening in the game, so that bug reporting is much faster. Bug reporting and bug fixing is much faster now, because you're able to see the stuff rather than typing it into a database and implementing it there and then addressing it. So the speed of development and the speed of iteration has greatly improved with the technology that we use now.
Yeah. And so like when you think about that, how do you like where do you imagine like development cycles are going to go in the future, right? Like there's been this big conversation, especially with like shared resources, documentations, tools, and everything else. I mean, there's certain studios that are like, we all got to return to office, and there's pros and cons to that. And then there are some people that are like, nah, we could do this remotely. I don't know what Studio 369's, position is on, on-site, hybrid, or remote, but like, where do you think the future is going and why?
I think it's a hybrid approach is the future, and that's what we're going to employ. I mean, right now we're mostly remote, but we do want to have in-person location in hubs of where most of the people are. We try to hire in the same location unless we find exceptional talent like around the world. But that's another benefit is we have found exceptional talent around the world, right? London, Australia, Middle East, actually, some talent from there. Asia, a lot of talent in Asia, of course. So it's great to work with all these different people in different time zones. But having a hub where people can visit is also valuable, especially for sometimes new people to the industry. Whether you're junior and you're coming out, you need a little bit more in-person direction. I think that's valuable. The most important thing is really to make sure that we work with people that are self-starters and are responsible and are going to basically deliver the task to the highest quality that they can. That's what we look to do and look to find. But we also give them a lot of autonomy. Um, so the reason why I think it's a hybrid approach is you have a lot of we have a lot of senior people that value being at home, that being able to spend family time and work on their own schedule. And we also have some junior people that want to be in an office because they don't want to be at their parents' house. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me personally, I think that one of the struggles I've had personally as the CEO of my organization is it's really hard to get junior people ramped up and integrated and to reduce the learning curve when they don't know how things work. And like sometimes it's like as much as we want to think that people are going to be able to poke someone on the shoulder, except like or ask for help or ask for support. I have found even if somebody's like a self-starter, super motivated, some of those people they don't know how to ask constantly because when you're remote, it's like you got to pick up the phone. It's like, all right, do we have a Discord channel that has an audio share all the time? And it's like, I don't like that. I do like that. I don't like I'm at home. Like, what if my spouse walks in? So integrating and ramping up junior people has been like a really interesting conversation where there are some studios that just say, we just don't do it. We don't do entry level hires. They have to have 3 years of game experience no matter what, and we're going to let one of the big guys, one of the AAA guys, they're going to be the ones that ramp up our junior people, and then we'll poach them 2, 3 years down the road. And that's been a weird conversation lately because it's like, well, how like when gaming in a lot of ways, like I mean, there's a decent amount of available talent today, but 2 years ago there was no available talent. Everybody was playing Leapfrog. There was more job postings across the world than there were available people, and just junior people at an all-time low were getting opportunities to break into the gaming industry to begin with. So I'm curious as to like, how do you imagine that's gonna change or with remote work?
I don't. I mean, for us, we've got one of the benefits is having my team leaders really have good connections with local kind of colleges
Mhm.
and game game instruction studios. So we're able to kind of get a pipeline of talent, and they know they're actually really good at teaching young talent how to work. So I think that's an advantage that I've fortunately found in my team and my partners to that they like this process and they want to do it, and we understand the value of bringing new perspectives and new ideas and new like a lot of times people we're not sure what people are going to want to play, right? So it's like bringing new talent in and junior devs, like, what are you playing and why do you like playing that? Is extremely valuable.
Interesting. Yeah, so you're like almost like the new talent can help and create new initiatives where it's just like we're going to be able to do something that speaks to you, because at the end of the day, like you're potentially more of the target than some of the veterans that have been building games for the last 20 years, where they're not the people doing a lot of the live ops stuff that's becoming the new stuff that's getting the most amount of traction.
Yeah, you see people that have kids and it's like they're playing what their kids play. Well, what is somebody who's 21, 22? What are you playing and why do you like playing it? What do you want to build? Right. And the most important thing I think in software or of any creative thing is that you really enjoy what you're making, right? That you're the ultimate, right? You're the first customer. And if you're not having fun and you're not enjoying it, then you need to make some pivots or some changes.
Yeah, which is interesting because one of the things that I always like to ask people is like when they think about continuous learning, continuous education, how they understand new trends, etc. Like, what do you use to keep up with market trends? What do you use to implement continuous learning, or things that your team uses? Like, how do you guys stay on top of new initiatives or new trends?
We actually have a policy like of checking out what's happening in the marketing, where things are going. I I think it's important to you utilize your time meeting with people at conferences and seeing what people are talking about doing. Um, I think kids are that demographic 15 to 21 are a fantastic resource. My kids are 16 and 13, and I'm always asking them like, what are you playing and why? And
So step
that's
one,
my
have children and just use them.
if not have children to hire young talent that are playing video games and they're really good at it. Um, I mean, there's a ton of information out there. You just kind of get a sense. I've always been able to like kind of see where things are going and get a sense. And looking at Bitcoin and blockchain and saying, yeah, this kind of seems like the place where things are going now. I think this is the place to be.
Yeah, and so when you've interviewed over at Studio 369, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of the people that are listening, part of what they're trying to experience is like, one is like, how did Matt get to where Matt's at? And then two is just like, all right, I want to work for Matt potentially or someone similar to them. And they're always trying to calibrate like, how do I prepare for an interview? How do I prepare to go into a job? So I'd love to kind of discuss a little bit of like red flag, green flag. So it's like, what are the things that you're looking for the most when you're interviewing for somebody that might be, entertaining the idea of working for Studio 369?
We're looking for very smart people that are pretty fun and outgoing and are able to think for themselves. Um, you know, that are willing to be curious and ask questions and look for novelty in an entertainment experience. Like what's going to be cool or fun about this game. Um, Honestly, my interview process is really to get to know who are you and where you're from and what your ethos are. What your values are. A strong sense of values and doing good work and being proud of your work and wanting to do the best job possible. At the same time, not being afraid to ask questions and not being uh, there's that rule no assholes, right, in a company. Like we really avoid that as much as possible, so we try to go away from egos. um, uh, and just that kind of thing, being educated, being worldly, being well read, I think is really important. um, And then I let my art director, my CTO, Dan and Vic, and then our lead designers. Those guys are really the ones that ask the real, "Are you qualified to do the job?" kind of question. But for me, it's mostly just knowing what kind of are you going to work hard and are you going to do your best?
Yeah. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people make?
I think people have a perception of the way things should be, of the way offices or work should go, um, and they think it's very formal and official. And I think in software, it's when you're making the games, in the way like having a studio, that the the less formal and official is it's just not going to fly, right? And at least in our studio, like we're just still game makers.
So if somebody's overly formal, you're like, for those reasons, I'm out.
Yeah, we try to have as few meetings as possible,
Okay.
right? We try to focus on resolutions. Like, what's the point of this, and what's the resolution? Like, what's the action item? And then we try to focus on who's the owner of this task, right? Who owns this and who's responsible? And we try to give everyone some level of ownership and responsibility. And yeah, everyone's got to hold the rope.
Got it. And so, like, when you imagine when you guys are hiring, how much weight is truly put on like culture fit and mission fit versus technical fit? Like, how do you balance the two? Where it's like they could be the most technical person in the world and they're world class, but it's like if they don't meet this, the answer is no. Like, how do you guys balance that?
I think it's on a case by case basis, really. But I'm pretty sure that everyone at the studio now is there because it's a cultural fit.
Okay. Yeah.
And we've had people who have been really talented that and really good that weren't a cultural fit, and we parted ways.
So let's dive into metalcore. Like I'm really
Yeah.
excited to really dive into that and truly understand what you're doing there. So help me just high level metalcore. Let's talk
Uh,
about it.
MetalCore is like an open world giant battlefield of combined arms. So you have infantry characters, you have different character classes you can play. You've got tanks, we've got aircraft, and then you've got giant mechs. And MetalCore came about from some of the early days of MechWarrior 2 that I was working on. That I said, wouldn't it be great if, and every software I think it starts with this idea of, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And then everyone starts thinking, well, how do we do that? And metalcore happened because of this long thought process of, wouldn't it be cool if we could do player ownership of the territory that we're fighting over, of all these mechs that are fighting? Wouldn't it be cool if at the end of the day I could say, yeah, I own this territory and I get some sort of compensation for that?
What do you believe stood out to them the most? So when they looked at your vision and when they were like, "Yep, we're ready to go. Let's do this." What do you imagine? I don't know if you were directly told or indirectly told, but like what was the thing about it that really got them excited the most?
What really got them excited was the quality of the team behind it.
Okay.
The fact that we'd done these games, that we'd launched a lot of software, that we were proven that we could kind of remove the whole uncertainty of, can we build a good game?
They're like, "No risk. These people are badasses. They're going to launch an amazing game. Let's let their vision come to light." Cuz like
That's what the VCs have told me, that they bet on us and they've stayed with us and stuck behind us. And it's been a bumpy ride through the blockchain ecosystem, but we're here. We've built a great game. It's a lot of fun. We have really great kind of user metrics and user feedback. Our community is awesome. They're hilarious. I love all the things that are happening with the community. And yeah, the VCs
what's
have
your
kind of.
favorite thing in your community?
I just love the memes that they're posting. Like, when is this happening and when can I get in? And the memes are crazy. It's just
The memes
post.
are awesome and you guys are creating raving fans along the way.
Yes, yes, and knowing that they're really our partners now. That's what's cool about blockchain, right? These guys have bought NFTs. They've stuck with it. They've held. They've got diamond hands.
Help me
We had
understand that. So there's going to be a group there's going to be a group of people that are listening to this that are like,
yeah,
"Heck yeah, diamond hands, let's go." And then there's going to be other people
yeah,
that are like, "Wow, you're speaking Japanese to me right now. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a part of the community that has ownership in the game? Like
yeah.
what does that mean?" So like let's say that I'm crypto curious or crypto naive and it's just totally over my head. What does that mean?
Right. So here's the difference with crypto games, and I use the air quotes on that because it's really the same game. You're just building the same game. You're just able to now own the asset that you've spent money on. So, and because you own that asset, whether it be a mech or a soldier, you can actually rent that that vehicle out or that character out for other people to play.
So one of the questions I've gotten, this happens
Yeah.
all the time. Every single time I have a client that is in the Web3 space, we partner with a lot of different Web3 studios all over the world. And one of the things that I think is so funny, because all the time I'm trying to recruit engineers, artists, producers, designers, and I'm trying to get them to go from these traditional gaming studios to these Web3 based studios. And one of the questions that always gets brought up all the time that I find to be hilarious, which I'd love for you to help me answer this, because I say it all the time to them, which is they're like, all right, well, if you do that, then are you going to put a lever that doesn't allow people under the age of 18 to earn as they play and to get rewards? Because there's a lot of people that fear that there's predatory earnings or predatory rewards for children under the age of 18 for playing these games because they're able to earn tokens. Like, what is your stance on that, and what does that even really mean to you?
That's really hard for me to conceptualize, Shane. Like, it's a teen game, right? There's no blood in it, so anyone can own. I mean, if you create your own wallet, then you can participate. I think you need to go through a KYC process on that. So I'm not seeing predatory stuff unless we're talking about gold farmers in China for WoW.
There are people that are like, children shouldn't be able to earn rewards on games, which I've found to be silly, because it's like all these free to play games, remove blockchain for a second,
Yeah,
they're able to earn anyways. So like,
yeah.
why does the blockchain all of a sudden change that for anyone? That's been like a weird kind of question that I get all the time, where it's like, but it's already happening, but nobody's ever complained about it. But how
I
does the
I'm
idea of
in your
blockchain change
stance.
anything?
I'm in your stance. It's the same thing, right? You can, yeah, it's the same as free to play.
I think it's identical. I've always thought that was funny, where it's just like, when, because I've always looked at Web3 and blockchain being as a mechanism that happens to be a way to drive economic value, but it doesn't change gameplay experience. And that, I think there's a lot of people that fear that blockchain will change gameplay experience.
I think blockchain will change the experience in terms of you'll have people that maybe not are not great game players, but they're able to participate in the game because they can own assets and they can share those assets. Right? They can create a barony, they can create a group, they can create a guild of players that are all working towards common goals. Right? Um, whether it be ownership. Now, it may change the behavior of that player, um, but I think we're seeing that happen in gaming across the board, actually.
How much do you think that that's going to affect the gaming community?
Um,
Or I mean, you're saying it a little bit, but I'm like curious, like, how does that truly change player behaviors, communities, etc. within gaming? Like, when you have this idea of rewards and NFTs and whole like joining for the economic value versus the player experience.
so I don't think it changes the behavior so much. I think the behavior kind of exists the same. We're not trying to build the game any differently than we would if it was a free to play game or and we were launching it as we would, like in a store. The economics are pretty much the same in a variety of different ways. We're just giving kind of another outlet, a new kind of way for people to utilize the economy, and that's to say, hey, I want to go ahead and trade this item that I found or I built, which previously all it has existed in games, right? It just existed through a third party or kind of a different process rather than happening within the ecosystem.
Yeah. And so, like, what do you imagine is, the most important thing in Web3 gaming genres for it to ultimately be successful? Because there's a lot of, I mean, you guys are about to be one of the first games that is successfully launching a Web3 game. I mean, there's some that are out there, right? But you're getting ready to pioneer that, which is really, really exciting. But what do you imagine it's going to take for the Web3 genre to really take off and be successful?
Um, There's a lot of good games out there that are doing well and succeeding. I think one of the things we're really focusing on is it being a fun experience that people sit down and say, "This is where I want to spend my time." Right? I don't want to feel like it's a job. Right? Come home, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that in our playtests where people are spending 5, 6 hours a night playing, and they're not getting tired of the game, and they're not getting bored, and they're saying this is a lot of fun, and wow, that time went by like who knew. And so that's, I think, the thing is these is games in Web3 need to have these quality experiences, regardless whether it's Web2 or Web3. It needs to be a quality game experience that people say, "Where'd my time go?"
I also love the fact that in the Web3 community, it's so player and community driven, where the success of the game is dependent on the investment and it's the time and the quality and keeping assets in the game and keeping people driven in the game. Because if they leave and they take their money out of it and they take their items out of it, and they if they do that, things are going to plummet. But as long as you have a vibrant community, the sky's the limit, and it removes the need for certain investors if you have a thriving community constantly investing in you.
Yeah, our thesis is the game world big enough to handle people spending lots of hours in it? That's kind of our criteria that we think is gaming in Web3 needs to be successful, is that people could spend 5 or 6 hours besides just being a clicker.
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense. And so I guess what features can players expect to see in upcoming, metalcore closed beta?
Our main, so we've been doing a big open world, lots of a big battlefield where a lot of random elements. We have a system called the DGen mission generator system, which generates missions based on your loadout, your stats, your level. Closed beta 3 is really focused on team session based PvP, where it's a very focused, hey, the teams are more balanced. It's going to last for so many minutes. Just more of an esports type of competitive mode is what closed beta 3 is having. And we're just starting to let people play that on the weekends now. And we're seeing a lot of good feedback and a lot of good notes that, hey, we're on the right track for this session based PvP.
How can somebody be a part of one of your closed betas?
You go to www.metalcore.gg, put an email address in, we'll send you a closed beta key.
Cool. And how successful was your most recent beta?
Yes, we did a 2-week beta for servers were up 24/7 for 2 weeks from May 1 to May 14th. We saw 10,000 MAU, so 10,000 very active new players in that time frame and 2,000 daily actives. So these numbers are what you would see, and we kept it. We kept it at 10,000, right? We kept it at 10,000. Um, Fantastic, over 100,000 hours played of game time during those 2 weeks,
Incredible.
which is we're really excited to see that people, averaging 10 hours per person played for in that time. Some people playing 200-300 hours. Very competitive gameplay, very excited feedback. The whole memes of when I don't want to go to work, I want to play metalcore. That kind of the car exiting the freeway meme.
You're like, I got to pretend to be sick today because like I'm a little bit addicted and we got to get some metalcore in. So
That's the kind of notes, right? People saying that, hey, I play COD, I play League of Legends, I play WoW. This is a game that I have the same kind of I want to keep playing this game type of response. So that was the feedback from closed beta that kind of said, oh yeah, we're on to some good stuff. There's still a lot of improvements to make. New sound effects, new vehicles, new skins. Um, Overall, just a better like kind of leveling and UI curve. So lots of things happening.
I'm just curious,
Yep.
whether it be now or in the past, like what are some other studios, projects, or games that have inspired you? Like, where are you guys getting your inspiration from? I mean, obviously your kids, step one. Like-
Um, wow, that's a. I mean, there's so many good studios out there. We have a great relationship with Epic. They're really supportive. They've been fantastic. Um, you know, Steam and Valve back in the day. Even though Steam and Valve are like still on the fence about Web3, I think they're approaching it pretty sensibly. Um, I don't know right now. Let's say, I mean, we're looking at Mark Long and Shrapnel, and those guys are doing fantastic. Nine Heroes, Big Time. Looking at those guys, haven't seen some success. Wild Card, a lot of great games out there that have a lot of great developers that have bought into Web3, and it's fantastic to see. We're talking, we Pixelmon, they're a great supporter. Chronoforge, Portal, all these. What's great about Web3 is all of us are actually working together and trying to help and working to help each other, and that was something that's never happened to me in video games. Right? It used to be super competitive between other studios,
And now you're
and
seeing a sense of collaboration. And what I think is so cool about the Web3 community in a lot of ways is that community, like
yeah,
community at the core, which is
yeah,
like, it's so cool seeing like not only individual communities be able to blossom, but like the fact that communities are open to collaboration more now than ever, on helping each other thrive, which has been awesome to see.
it is awesome to see. And I've told people this feels like when we were making games a long time ago, when we were working with other studios, and you'd go to GDC and you talk to people from all the other places, and you say, "Hey, what do you like?" We'd solve the same problems, right? We'd see the same problems because we were all trying to figure out platform stuff and OS stuff and 3D card hardware stuff, and going to DirectX in Seattle, that convention, and trying to figure out DirectX, um, and so I think we're seeing a lot of the same things now happening in Web3, which is customers, delivery of the games,
Which is awesome
operation
to
of the
see, like,
games.
people
Yeah.
collaborate, talk about it, because, like, I know
Yes.
right now a lot of gaming studios, like, you go to GDC and you're like, "What are you working on?" And they're like, I'm under NDA and I really can't share anything." And you're like, "Okay, cool, yeah. So, like, what kind of game?" And you're like, "I guess the MMORPG." And it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
great." Or I guess the first person shooter. It's like, "Okay, cool. What are some of your problems? Let's talk about them." It's like, Can't really talk about them. I'm under NDA." And it's like, "Well, this was great for talking. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
glad that I came here to meet you." And
Yeah.
I felt like that's like a lot of what GDC was. Not this last year, but the year before. This year, GDC was, I mean, everybody has their own opinion on it. But like last year's GDC, I mean, there was a lot of people, but like, yeah, it was, everything was so secretive, everything was so underground. And it's like, unless you were like just going to those indie developer, showcases, like I wasn't really getting much out of anybody
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
except for the Web3 community. It's like you go to there and Shrapnel was like very open to talking about what they were doing, and it's very, and what I think is the coolest thing is the Web3 stuff has so much open source information and white papers, and they're just publishing everything, which is incredible. Everybody else is keeping things under wraps, and I mean, we're seeing what's happening with a lot of that. There's a lot of
you're
follow.
s- you're spot on. That's the thing. We have to tell everybody what we're doing in our white paper, right? Here's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious of like, how do you think that in itself, how do you believe that's going to evolve the gaming community? Because for me, I have my own kind of thesis and philosophy behind it. But it's like, for me, it's just like everybody has been so secretive around what they're doing. It's just like nobody's truly building anything original because like so many people have closed door projects, but it's like what's funny to me, because like I'm not allowed to I sign NDAs across all of my clients, but I work
Yeah.
with so many indie studios and so many small studios, they got AAA funding or whatever, where they're like, I'm working on this really cool thing, it's like a once in a lifetime type project. And what's hard for me is like I want to tell them and be like, yes, so you're the seventh studio, because I'll sign NDAs, right? Like I'll sign NDAs
Yeah.
and they'll show me the games. I'll do a play test with them. I'll get into the weeds of their projects because like I'm going out and recruiting and I'm trying to find people that have built the systems that they want built or have worked in the art style that they want to work in. So like they'll show me the guts of the things, but like the first thing I want to say is like, yeah, I'm working with 7 other studios doing exactly what you do. But I'm not allowed to say that because I have signed an NDA. And so that will never be said by me because I can't. But it's like, I believe that especially with the white papers and the open source community, it's just like there's so much knowledge that can be shared across like the industry, that can help allow people to go to market, to survive, to build something cool and special. Where it's like, again, there's 7 studios that are building so many products similar to each other, and they don't even know it. The investors know it. They
Yeah.
can hedge their bets, but outside of the investors, no, like it blows my mind.
Well, it was a big shift for us when we had to put our first white paper together and basically say, here's what we're doing. which was really, early 2022, and it was terrifying. All pretty much most of my studio revolted, and everyone said, "No, we're not going to say." I was like, "We have to do this. This is what we have to tell everybody what we're doing." Um, there are pivots to that. I think everyone in the market needs to understand there will be pivots to when you say what you're doing. Um, but that's just generally a big hurdle that we had was telling everyone, "Here's our design doc right now," and sharing that with the world.
Yeah, I always think one of the interesting conversations I've had with people where they have this pro and con list around like sharing to community. One of the pros that I've heard from you, especially, is like the fact that you had how many people in your beta recently?
Yeah,
10,000?
yeah, yeah.
That's
Easily 10,000.
incredible. Like, how many studios at your size can say that they had a beta test with 10,000 people that has a product that, like, not very many. That's incredible.
Okay, I mean, we've had more, right? We've had more players participate, but this one was really kind of focused. I think that's just the way software has to go now, right? Where you're putting it out there for a while, especially in Web3, right? You need a lot of eyes on your game loops and your economy and your mechanics, right?
I
To
just
make
think there's
sure.
such a benefit to your ability to build player community really early on that a lot of
Yeah,
these, again, these new studios, they really struggle with it because they can't really build community when everything's under NDA. You guys have the privilege of posting, publishing, and building that community early on.
yeah. And I've seen a lot of other games in the past kind of have this track level of success. I've seen this roadmap, and I see that metalcore is kind of on that same roadmap, so that's really encouraging. And I can tell that to my team, my investors, my community, my players. Hey guys, I've seen this before. We're on the right track.
Yeah. I've seen some fail because of it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't wanna throw too many people under the bus, but I know, like, for example, like, I know Crowfall was something that I was really excited about, and, I think there was a lot of people that were really excited about Crowfall, but, like,
yeah,
their player community had too much say in what they were doing, and they allowed for the feedback loops to come in way too early where they didn't even truly define a game loop yet, and they really struggled at shipping a product because they allowed the community to dilute their vision, and their vision wasn't at least 80% baked
yeah.
before they started doing player testing.
I wouldn't comment on other studios, but I know that our solution is to constantly be playing the game frequently as a team
No,
and ruthlessly criticize, the game or enthusiastically support when we like something, and so it's like a constant cycle of playtesting inside the studio. And that's, I think, one thing I would suggest to people that are making games is try to get to a playable as fast as possible and find that fun. That's always the hard part of game development is finding that fun. But once you do, then you kind of zero in on it and stick with it and hang on to that.
yeah, which I know that there's been a lot of hype around the idea of using the Unreal Editor tool where they can start building within Fortnite specifically to release specific game loops for player testing. And I know
Yeah,
that's been like a big thing lately where people are like, let's try to get our game loop out as fast as possible and go, is this fun? Yes or no? And try to rapid iterate that while building small pieces of games.
we kind of agree with that process. Yeah. I mean, we're an Unreal team and we love Unreal Engine, and our CTO helped build Unreal 3. So we've been kind of using that kind of philosophy for several years now.
Yeah, that's been a trending topic across a lot of studios lately is by shipping game loop, getting player testing around small features, and then adding like allowing people to have that in their hands first, and then
Yeah.
bringing it back into the game.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to your earlier question, like how is game dev changing? I think this kind of thing and iterative game dev is like one of the strengths or one of the changes that's a positive change actually now. And I think things are moving so fast and customers move so fast and that you have to this kind of old model of taking a long time to build a game and get there is, I don't know, it might be outdated.
I genuinely think it is, and I think that it's because there are like smaller things that are happening in day-to-day lives that are
Yeah.
starting to condition consumer behaviors to want more instant gratification,
Yeah,
right?
and I think you see consumers wanting to say, "Hey, I'll have a lot of these different gameplay experiences, but I'll play it for a little bit and then I'll move on to something else." And that's instead of, and I think other studios have actually said this. Big studio came out and said, "Look, we've gone away from AAA games where people play a AAA game and they move on to the next AAA game. we now in a scenario where people play a lot of different games all at the same time, and we're able to share that kind of customer. And I think that goes back to the Web3 idea, which is we're going to share this player and have them experience great content in a variety of games, and we're all going to help participate in the success loops of that.
Yeah, which I think is incredible, and I'm excited to see that journey,
Yeah.
and, you know, and that evolution here over time. So, well, Matt, I guess what are you at? I guess I want to kind of throw it back to you real quick. What are you hiring for today? Like, are you currently hiring at Studio 369?
Yeah, we are. We're looking for engineers. We're looking for artists. We're looking for designers. Right. We're always looking for talent. Some economist stuff too. Right. People that know how to run economies. It's like we're adding more projects to the studio. So MetalCore is coming up to a pretty significant milestone, and then we're going to move on to some other projects, but as supporting MetalCore too, because we've got a long road with that game. But the success of it has kind of opened up other doors for us.
That's fantastic. And how can people reach out to you? How can they get a hold of you or engage with Studio 369 in general?
Yeah, we have a contact at 369.fun, jobs at 369.fun, and then our website as well. You can post there. www.369.fun.
Perfect. Well, Matt, I genuinely appreciate you taking time to kind of share your story and talk about metalcore with us today. And if you enjoyed today's, uh, comment below, like, share, follow Matt on LinkedIn, follow everything that metalcore is doing, join their community. They've got an active one. If you want to become one of the somebody that's in one of the betas and playtest, join it, get involved. So,
Shane, thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
yeah,
Really enjoyed it.
really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.